Hey everyone, hey, it's Todd Carpenter with Keller Williams Realty, and I'm here with Mike Bringhurst at Patriot Mortgage. I wanted to bring in a professional that can educate you guys or give you guys a little better information than what I can about some of the questions that we're getting recently. The main one being, how is it that mortgage rates are going down when the Fed funds that you hear on the news all the time is going up? Where's the disconnect? How is that possible? And so I figured I'd bring someone who understands it way better than I do, and there's a trusted source that can give us that information. So, Mike, why don't you go ahead and tell us about how that works?
I don't want to go into make it too deep here, but it is kind of some of this stuff is hard to understand, and to really get a full picture, you need to know some backup, what's happened in the past. But I guess first of all, it's important to know what is the Fed funds rate and what is the mortgage rate. They are two separate things. The Fed funds rate is the rate that the Federal Reserve Bank lends money to banks and credit unions. So if Wells Fargo Bank wants to go get some money from the Federal Reserve, they can at a certain rate, okay? Mm-hmm. And so the mortgage rate is something completely different. It's the interest rate on your home loan. And the things that moves both of those things is also completely different. For example, we all know that inflation has gone through the roof, kind of across the board in all products of goods sold. And so the Federal Reserve had this thought, and they've done this in the past, they're like, if we made money more expensive to banks, then banks will make money more expensive to consumers, mm-hmm. and then consumers will realize that money's more expensive and they'll spend less money. If consumers spend less money, then inflation will come down because there's less demand, mm-hmm. right?
Right.
So the Federal Reserve has increased the Fed funds rate for months and months now with that in mind. Mm-hmm. And that's what's going on there. On the flip side, let's talk about the mortgage rate. Yep. Why is it going down? The mortgage rate is going down because it is impacted by multiple things. And the main thing right now that it's impacted by is inflation numbers.
Right.
And we're about to see the third month in a row now. What we look at year over year inflation. What was inflation like last year in November or December, and what was it this year? So in November we had a good reading, December we had a good reading, and January we had a good reading.
Compared to the prior year at that time,
compared to the
correct?
prior year,
right.
Yep. And to the mortgage company, I can get into the why, but for the sake of this little video and conversation, for the mortgage company and the mortgage investors out there, the fact that inflation is slowly starting to come down is really good, and they're happy to lower the interest rate to the consumers because of that. Mm-hmm. So in a nutshell, that's what's going on. They're two completely different things, though. And just a side note, I personally don't know that most people or some people in the media understand this. You'll read articles, yeah. And I'm like, in all due respect to the journalist, I'm like, I don't know if the guy writing that article understands that right. The Fed funds rate and the mortgage rate are two different things.
Definitely seen that, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and unfortunately that's, we view that those media sources sometimes as, well, they must know because they're in the media, right? And
yeah.
So they don't always have a deep knowledge of how things work, or a deep understanding of how those things work, or how one thing's going to affect the other. And so we wanted to really get back into, hey, this is somebody who's a specialist. This is someone who really knows what they're talking about in the industry. And maybe if I could put you on the spot a little bit, do you feel like rates are going to continue to come down this year?
I do. And the reason why, if we go a little bit deeper, what truly causes mortgage rate to go up or down is a mortgage company sells your loan. All of those of you that have a mortgage, you know this. You're like, well, the guy that did my loan doesn't have my loan anymore. They sell the loan, and the loan is eventually purchased on the bond market. It's a bond. And mortgage companies truly just make money by selling loans. Mm-hmm. We do a loan and we sell it. That's just how the industry works. And so if you think about it, if our rate is high, that's what we need to do to appease the investor to buy it. They're like, oh, what a great rate of return. Let's buy that mortgage.
Right.
But with the rates being as high as they've been, there's not many consumers coming to get loans in the first place. And so it's good for the investors that are buying a good mortgage note, but we're not doing many loans because no one wants to take on that high rate.
Right.
And so as soon as the investors and the mortgage companies see inflation continue to get better, the first thing we want to do is do whatever it takes to get more consumers to come get loans.
Right.
And that's the number one reason why I'm confident that rates will come down is the mortgage industry can only hold out for so long.
Right.
And the key needle-moving thing that helps the mortgage industry feel comfortable lowering their rate and helps investors feel comfortable buying at a lower rate is inflation is coming down. And think about it. It needs to come down because an investor is not going to invest in a mortgage that has a lower rate of return than inflation. Mm-hmm. Right? That's why the inflation impacts it so much. So
that makes sense.
As inflation comes down, investors will be like, yeah, I could invest in a 5% mortgage now because inflation's below 5.
Right.
That's why that will all snowball.
That makes sense. So
long-winded answer.
Together. No, that's great because that's what we want to hear. That's what we want to understand is how that works. So how the mortgage industry, how the rates are being set.
Yeah. So just to summarize real quick, remember, it's all about mortgage companies selling loans. No investor in their right mind would invest in a 30-year bond that has a lower rate of return than inflation. Mm-hmm. You're literally losing money.
Right.
That's why the mortgage rate has had to go up. It went up in tandem for a while with the Fed funds rate, so a lot of people thought they were the same thing, but they're not.
Yeah, great. So, and here's an interesting thought here is with the interest rates going up, the Fed, kind of really accomplished what they wanted to have happen with home prices, for instance. Home prices definitely stabilized, and you've seen actually prices coming down. What I see happening is as home prices come down and mortgage rates come down, that's going to create a huge buy signal for people, right? And so we've kind of got this interesting window of opportunity right now where we've got mortgage rates coming down, some list prices coming down, and sellers actually being willing to make concessions now, such as seller paid closing costs. And so we want to take advantage of those opportunities for our buyers and say, hey, seller, they're willing to pay X amount of dollars towards your closing costs or towards a rate buy down. So now we've got these rates coming down, and let's take advantage, if we can, of maybe buying down the rate on the seller's dime, right? And getting to that rate earlier. So let's say if rates were 5 7/8 today, or whatever they are today, and we could buy down 0.5% or whatever, and it doesn't cost the buyer any money, why not? And then if rates get even better, then you refinance, right? And get that better rate later. That's
right. I feel like, and I'm trying to explain this to people as often as I can, we are in a buyer's market. And it's funny because I would say the majority of buyers don't yet know that.
Yeah. Well, because mainstream hasn't got there yet.
Yeah. Yep. But we're in a buyer's market mostly because of the fact that sellers will concede so much, like you said, and the inventory's
so much.
There's so much more inventory. There's so much more opportunity. Yep. And if you think about the numbers of it, if you don't mind me adding, if you think about the numbers of it, a $400,000 home a year ago would have been bid up to $430,000 or $440,000 with a low rate. Mm-hmm. That same home now could maybe be purchased right at $400,000 or $390,000 with a concession. And so, but the consumer's like, yeah, but my mortgage payment's higher because of the rate. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, so your mortgage payment's higher by $500 more a month, but you got the house for $40,000 less. How many months of paying $500 a month does it take you to be worse off than you were last year? Yeah. So as long as when the buyers start to understand these concepts, they'll realize. So the key is to buy before everyone realizes they should buy.
Before the window's closed.
Because that's when the demand will just bring it all back up.
Yeah. Well, and when that buy signal happens, I mean, you're going to have multiple buyers getting back into the market. We're going to get potentially back into the spot of, okay, well, do prices start going up again?
Yeah.
But then you may actually be competing against those investors too, because they're smart, they understand, they know how to read the market, and they're going to see these things happening. And so when you start seeing a lot of buyers or investors buying, I mean, it's go time.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. Well, I appreciate you taking the time, Mike, to give us a little better information, and hopefully you guys have found this information helpful. If we can ever answer any questions for you, please reach out to us. You can always email me, text me, or call me, and we'll get your answers taken care of.
Okay. Thanks, Todd.
Have a great one. We'll see you.